So welcome everyone. I'd like to say hello and welcome to another webinar organized by UNIDO. This is another event within our series of webinars to discuss the implications of quality and standards in the context of the current health crisis related to COVID-19. My name is Dorina Nati and I'm here today with the renowned panelists and my colleague who will take over the moderation. Today's session will focus on standards and conformity assessment approaches in African, Caribbean, and Pacific regions, discuss the fight against COVID-19. We have 5 panelists today, and more than 400 attendees have registered to follow the discussion online. I would like to thank everybody for being here with us today, the renowned panelists and the attendees. The session will start with some introductory remarks, followed by a panel discussion and a question and answer session. For the attendees, you're encouraged to please post your questions in writing in the little Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom window. We will selectively choose the questions and ask them to the panelists towards the end of the panel. We would like to apologize in advance if we will not be able to attend all the questions that are placed. We will do our best to pick up most of the questions and pose them to the panel. We would like also to take full advantage of the technology today, so the session will be recorded and the recordings will be made available. For any further information on this panel or other panels or other webinars that we are organizing, please refer to the TII Knowledge Hub under tii.unido.org. And having said that, I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Dominika Dor, who will be moderating today's session. Dominika is an Industrial Development Officer at UNIDO's Division of Quality Infrastructure and Smart Production within the Department of Digitalization, Technology and Innovation. She's managing a number of technical cooperation projects in multiple countries such as Mozambique, Myanmar, and others, and she's also managing a regional program in the ACP region. Dominika will be moderating today's session. We're very pleased that she's doing so, and with that, Dominika, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dorina. Thank you so much for those introductions. And first of all, let me start by welcoming everyone to this webinar, all the distinguished panelists and all the distinguished audience. We are very happy and very honored that so many of you have decided to spend that morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on the time zone you're in, with us. So a warm welcome to all of you. So my name is Dominika Dor. Dorina already presented me briefly. So I will be your moderator for this session. It's my first time to moderate an event. So hopefully, due to the beginner's luck and hard work of all those involved and all those who contributed to this event, everything will go smoothly and successfully. So let's first pose the most important question, which is why are we here today? And we are here today to share, mostly share the knowledge and the experiences of what is actually happening at the level of standards and conformity assessment in the ACP to mitigate the impact of COVID pandemic, both during and after the crisis. So as you all know, we have encountered ourselves with the unprecedented situation. And the COVID-19 pandemic is confronting all of us with a number and with a set of new challenges. And every country, every region is experiencing negative impacts either on their society, economy, and the healthcare systems. And overall, the pandemic is also causing the disruption, of course, to the global value chains, to the food supply chains, to manufacturing, tourism, and travels. So pretty much all areas and all aspects of our lives. And what is, however, most important is that the COVID-19 goes beyond the national borders. So it's a global phenomena, and as such, it calls not only for a national response, but also for the regional and, of course, global response. So from the ACP countries' perspective, and it's obvious that the private sector and the enterprises, it affects, of course, their competitiveness. And all the private sector will be severely affected at all levels, and is already affected at all levels by the COVID-19. And it's because of the regional and of course global nature of the value chains. When one area of the value chain is affected, it has a ripple down effect to the entire economy and to other parts of the value chain. So here, what I'm very much looking forward is that we will discuss how we can actually together contain the virus and contain the effects that the virus has on our lives, and in particularly on private sector and the economy. So I hope that some of the solutions will look into the need to work together at the regional level, the need to work also together on the collective regional standards and conformity assessment measures, and also to reorient some of the priorities at the government, private sector, and other stakeholders level to address this global challenge. Also, what is very important is that the way we look at this pandemic is long-term, meaning that we will establish now as a result or strengthen the infrastructure and the services that will result in the long-term positive societal change. So with regard to actually some practicalities of this regional work, of the regional work on the quality infrastructure, I would like to briefly highlight some of the aspects of the ACP project. The ACP project deals with support to business-friendly and inclusive national and regional policies and strengthening productive capabilities and value chains. And it is EU funded. It covers African, Caribbean, and Pacific regions. And it is jointly implemented by UNIDO, World Bank, and ITC. What I would like, however, to focus here on is a very small component of that project, which deals with the quality infrastructure for market access. And I think that this can be a great testimony to the fact that sometimes with little resources, you can do great things. And actually through this component and through activities implemented under this component, we have, this is something that actually brings all the panelists of today's webinar together. So just to highlight a couple of points. So with the help of this project, we have managed to do among other things, we have managed to actively contribute to the regional quality infrastructure workshop organized by the Pacific Island Forum, which was held in Fiji last year, where actually all the key stakeholders for the quality infrastructure for the region were there, and we're sitting at one table to try and come out with the roadmap for the quality infrastructure development for the region. We have, of course, also managed to actively participate in the work led by ARSO, African Organization for Standardization, on the African quality policy development, which we find quite crucial in setting up a framework for the quality infrastructure. And also, this project allowed CROSQ to actively contribute to the work that UNIDO is leading on the development of the guide for laboratory policy formulation. And this work is particularly relevant and critical right now, as with the sustainable laboratory infrastructure, we are able to actually address pandemics like that one. And this laboratory infrastructure needs to be fit for purpose and aligned with the current and emerging needs and priorities. So that's all as the introduction to our discussion. So now let me move over to the brief introduction of our distinguished panelists of today. I will introduce the panelists in order in which they will be speaking. So we are very pleased to have with us today Her Excellency, the Ambassador, Mere Valesi Falemaka, who is a permanent representative and ambassador at the permanent delegation of the Pacific Island Forum to the United Nations, WTO, and other international organizations in Geneva. Ambassador is joining us today from Geneva, Switzerland. On behalf of the ECOWAS Commissioner, Mamadou Traoré, we have today here with us Dr. Kemji Ajoku, Head of Industry Division at the Department of Industry and Private Sector Promotion at ECOWAS. So Dr. Ajoku is joining us from Abuja, so welcome. Dr. Hermogene Sengimana, Secretary General of the African Organization for Standardization, ARSO, is joining us today from Nairobi in Kenya. Welcome. Mr. Derek Omar, Chief Executive Officer of the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality, CROSSQ, is joining us from Barbados. And we also have Dr. Bernardo Calzadilla Sarmiento, a Managing Director, Directorate of Digitalization, Technology and Agribusiness of United Nations Industrial Development Organization. And Mr. Calzadilla Sarmiento is joining us from Vienna, Austria. So just to briefly mention, once again, welcome everyone, and welcome the most important also element of this seminar, which is the audience. As Dorina has mentioned, we were quite impressed to receive over 400 registration for this event, which I find quite impressive and difficult to replicate in the real life scenario. So with the help of the ICT technologies, it's much, much easier. So we want you also to get to be a part of today's discussions and to get involved in today's discussions. So please ask the questions through the questions and answer box at the bottom of the page, and we will take as many as possible at the end of the session. So just in addition, maybe to the couple of points of order as mentioned by Dorina, before we move to the questions, we will have two very quick polls to kickstart the discussion. And please let me remind you that there is no wrong or right answers to the polls. This is just to get the feeling of the general mood and also the kickstart the discussion. So don't be afraid to contribute and participate in the poll. And then we will move on to the main body of the webinar. So maybe with that, we can kickstart the polls. Okay. So as you can see, we have a first question on the screen. Please feel free to answer any way you see fit. You will have around 20 seconds for that. The question is, which of the following sustainable development goals do you think has been severely impacted as a result of the pandemic crisis? SDG 3, good health and well-being. SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. SDG 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. And SDG 17, partnership for the goals. So please make your selection. As I said, there is no right or wrong answers. And please press the submit button. And in a few seconds, the poll will close. The first question will close and we will see the answers. Okay, good. So actually, quite interesting results. And as expected, the number one as the most affected SDG is the one on good health and well-being, and number two, with a couple of percentage less, is decent work and economic growth. So thank you so much for participating with to the first and answering the first poll question. And the second poll question is, do you think that regional cooperation is important for addressing global challenges, such as the current pandemic? And the answers are very important, important, somehow important, and not important. That is a very relevant question for our today's discussion. Okay, very good, very good. That answer makes me very happy because the majority of our listeners today agree with the importance of the regional cooperation for addressing global challenges such as COVID-19 situation. Thank you so much. So now with that, we can then move to the first round of questions. And I will start with Ambassador Falemaka. So the first question is with you. So how are the Pacific Island Forum countries affected by the COVID-19 pandemic? And what coordinated actions are taken at the national and regional levels to combat the health, economic, and trade hardship of the population? Thank you. Over to you.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Madam Facilitator. And first of all, let me extend, on behalf of the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat, our appreciation for this invitation to participate at this UNIDO webinar on COVID-19 and quality infrastructure development. We are delighted to participate, and we would also like to thank you again for UNIDO's participation at our regional workshop in September 2019. On to your question, the first part of the question, which relates to the effects of COVID-19 on the Pacific Island countries. From a health perspective, the developing Pacific countries have generally been sheltered from COVID-19. Mindful of the weaknesses of national health systems, the closure of borders and the introduction of travel restrictions have been swift and bold in the Pacific. As a result, only 2 Pacific countries, Fiji and Papua New Guinea, have had very small number of imported cases, which are now under control. As you probably know, 13 countries that were, out of 13 countries that were not affected by COVID-19, 10 are from the Pacific Islands. So this is one instance where the region's isolation, which we often see as a disadvantage in terms of trade, has worked in our favor. However, that being said, we are not cushioned against the impact of COVID. The impact of COVID-19 on the Pacific Islands Forum countries have been significant, with estimated losses of around 4 to 6% of GDP based on Asian Development Bank estimates. The region's GDP is now expected to decrease by 0.3% in 2020 from 3.8% growth in 2019. This, combined with a population growth of about 2%, implies a decrease in per capita income and a likely increase in poverty and hardship for our region. With domestic activities sheltered from COVID-19, the pandemic has mainly worked through external channels, notably affecting tourism, commodities, and remittances. On tourism, travel restrictions and border closures have essentially brought tourism to a halt, with no immediate prospect of rebounding. The countries most dependent on tourism are bearing the brunt of COVID-19, with layoffs and closures observed across the spectrum of tourism-related activities. Fiji Airways, Fiji's national airline, the biggest carrier in the Pacific, epitomizes the severity of the tourism crisis. The company has cut more than half of its 1,500 staff and reduced payment for the remaining staff by 20%. Commodity exporters, especially the Melanesian countries of Fiji, Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, and Vanuatu, have also been affected by the decline in global demand, compounded by disruptions in logistic networks. Papua New Guinea has been severely impacted by the sharp decline in the price of energy and metals, whereas other Melanesian Pacific countries have been damaged by the decline in the price of agricultural commodities such as coconut oil, cocoa, coffee, and sugar. Countries dependent on remittances also suffer from the reduced ability of migrants to remit money, notably increased unemployment of permanent migrants and border closures preventing seasonal workers to reach foreign markets are expected to reduce remittances by 22% in 2020. For countries where remittances represent a very significant share of GDP, for example, in Tonga, Samoa, and Kiribati, COVID-19 is expected to severely worsen living conditions. So what is the region doing? The region has acted swiftly to address COVID-19 and offset economic losses. Response packages have been adopted by all Pacific governments and development partners to support the health sector and provide direct income support, as well as to help the private sector to stay afloat. National policy responses have averaged 6.2% of regional GDP, a high figure by Pacific standards. At the regional level, efforts have focused on the development of a Pacific humanitarian pathway, a coordination mechanism approved by the Foreign Affairs Ministers aimed at enabling the provision of medical and humanitarian assistance from regional, international, and development partners in a timely, safe, effective, and equitable manner. This includes expediting medical assistance, expediting customs clearance of medical supplies, and facilitating diplomatic clearances for chartered flights on commercial shipping. Looking ahead, the Pacific is engaged in the development of a regional travel bubble to allow for free movement of citizens amongst COVID-safe countries. Initially developed between Australia and New Zealand, the bubble is expected to also include Pacific countries with a view to re-establishing key tourism and remittance flows. So summing up, the COVID-19 impact in the Pacific has been severe, and the response we feel adequate. The key challenge now is to promote recovery, and to do so, quality infrastructure will have an important role to play. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for that message, and thank you for sharing your experiences. And now I will move on to Dr. Ajoku. And in the case of the Africa region, there are about 100,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases, and that number, unfortunately, is still growing. So from the ECOWAS perspective, how hard is the industrial sector affected by the pandemic in Africa? And what coordinated steps is ECOWAS taking to support the private sector in those difficult times? Over to you, Dr. Ajoku.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Yes, we can hear you very well.
Hello? Okay. Yeah, I have to apologize because in this climate, this part of the world, we are still suffering with infrastructure constraints because my internet has been fluctuating. And I pray that it will enable me to be able to do justice to this issue. I will start by thanking UNIDO for organizing this important webinar at this particular point in time, which we globally are challenged by health issues occasioned by the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. On behalf of my commissioner, Mr. Mamadou Traore, who is supposed to be in this webinar, but due to urgent official assignment, he could not participate, but he is with us in spirit and has requested me to sit in for him, and hopefully I'll be able to speak the mind of my commissioner. ECOWAS Commission is very, very appreciative of this opportunity granted to us to participate. And I'm sure it's an eloquent testimony to the fact that the relationship between ECOWAS and UNIDO has gone a long way, because we have received a lot of support from technical support from UNIDO through the funding mechanism provided by the EU under the 10th, 11th, and then the 11th EDF, and which we are focused, in the area of quality infrastructure development, and then the quality program, which is a cardinal point of our the West African Common Industrial Policy. And I can tell you that among the 10 programs we have, this is the program that we have so implemented, because we have been able to get both financial support and technical support from our development partners. We appreciate UNIDO, and my commissioner has requested me to convey the appreciation of the president of ECOWAS Commission and the entire staff and management of ECOWAS to UNIDO for their untiring support to us. So quickly to the question concerning the COVID-19 pandemic and how it affects the region and our response to that, I will say that like my predecessor, said, no country, no region in the world has not been affected by this COVID. I will first of all give statistics of development, in the region from just April, when the COVID-19 pandemic picked up in the region. We recorded a total confirmed case of 6,083, recovered 1,793, active case 4,232, and deaths 158. This is as at 22nd of April 2020. As at 31st of May, just a couple of days ago, we have a confirmed case of 35,115, and the total recovery 14,812, deaths 717, active case 19,586. So you can imagine the trajectory of the infection, how it's going on. And I can tell you that the situation and the containment measures we've taken by our respective governments, have also gotten to a point that the people are becoming restless and are anxious to go out, because it affected their economic life. So the socio-economic impact of this pandemic is immeasurable, and there is no way we can be able to really adequately, assess the situation currently. But I can tell you that the major impact is the threat to jobs and livelihood, to the lockdown, particularly in the informal sector, aggravating food insecurity, and a lot of our people are really in the informal sector. These are people who earn their living by daily activities. And now the containment measures like closing of borders, imposing travel bans, people stay at home, or what we call the lockdown, has made it difficult for people to find themselves in economic activities. And this has created a lot of problems for the region. Now, manufacturing sector is affected because there's also reduction in production because workers are not enabled to go to the factories to work. And then there is increased consumption. We are not producing, we are consuming. And people are worried that with time, we might be able to run out of stock of food and other essential goods and services. Now, there is also the problem of lack of raw materials, because most of our countries depend on import of raw materials. And now with the trade restrictions going on, even the disruption in the global supply chain, this is creating a problem for our industries. And then we are now looking at looking inwards to see how we can be able to contain the issues and manage to produce essential goods and services in the country. Now, also internally, we are faced with the problem of border closure, because every country tries to see how it can take measures to contain within its territory the spread of the virus, creating a situation where there is no intra-regional trade, because all countries have blocked their borders, and it's becoming extremely difficult, and that has affected the region, considerably. Now, so what we are looking at is that, based on this emerging development, the first action we took is by ECOWAS Commission to organize, an extraordinary summit, of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Governments on the 23rd of April, to look at these issues and see how we can be able to have a regional approach or strategy towards addressing this issue, and also supporting one another, each member states, because we are not also on the same level of development and then capacity and capability to be able to handle this situation, but see how we can be able to generate a collective effort towards addressing the problem. So the heads of state met and they took far-reaching decisions. And if time will permit me, I'll just, because of the issue and then targeting the private sector, I will just mention 1 or 2, 3 issues they raised regarding, stabilization of the economy, in respect of this COVID. One is the issue of long-term treasury bills and bonds to finance critical investment needs to support the private sector and revive the economies. And then the second one is telling the central banks of our member states to see what they can do to assist SMEs, and then ensure that the microfinance institutions are providing adequate financial support to the informal sector. And then another issue which I think is very pertinent is the implementation of urgent measures to support local production of consumer goods, including agricultural products, thereby reducing the import bill for these goods. And this is the issue that this problem has generated the desire to look inwards, since the supply chain, global supply chain is disrupted, and we'll see what we can do internally to be able to support and sustain our economy. Then finally, the government also, regarding this, the authorities regarding the health sector, encourage member states to set up a support program for the pharmaceutical and health protection, the production of health protection equipment, whose output should cover almost 20% of the region's current consumption needs. So having taken these measures, ECOWAS Commission is driving the process to ensure that the decisions reached by the ECOWAS authorities at the April meeting are being implemented. And one of the major steps we took was, first of all, because when this problem came, member states decided to produce face masks and then sanitary hydroalcoholic sanitary gels and all the associated products. Now we discovered that there are myriads of these products in the market. Some are fake products, they don't conform to quality and standards, and then we took up the initiative with the technical support from UNIDO to harmonize standards for face masks as well as hydroalcoholic gel sanitizers. And as of today, we have been able to harmonize two standards, one for the face masks and the other one for the hand sanitizers. And we are now going forward to convey sector ministers meetings, ministers responsible for quality, to be able to validate these standards for us to now take it to the next level of ECOWAS procedure for decision making to the ECOWAS Council of Ministers. And we are hoping by the 5th of June, we are going to organize a ministerial meeting to validate these standards, and then by July, we'll be able to present it to the Council of Ministers for decision, or adoption. So now these are the measures we have taken, and then in line with our program within the West African Quality Program and then the West African Quality Infrastructure. I also want to say here that we are grateful to the European Union for providing funding support for us to be able to achieve this. We did in a very short time. Within 1 month, we're able to put our thoughts together to develop these two standards. It's not an easy thing. And also considering the issue regarding the technical issues concerning online interactions, or meetings like this. But with the support we got from UNIDO, we're able to have online meetings, several meetings, over 9 meetings we had for us to be able to harmonize these standards. And then we are very grateful to UNIDO for the technical support. We are very grateful to to the European Union for the financial support. Within the framework of the West African Competitiveness Program, we're able to achieve this. And I also want to say, apart from this, the government also put in place some social safety net provisions to mitigate the impact of the COVID. In some countries, they're able to defer electricity and water bills for vulnerable people in the society. Some also, introduce money transfer program to low-income people, like in Togo. And then there are other measures put in. The West African Health Organization is the regional health institution mandated to assist member states to see how we can be able to cushion the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. And they took appropriate measures to ensure that personal protection equipment are sent to member states, and also ventilators, hand sanitizers, face masks were donated to member states to assist them to mitigate the impact and contain the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think with this, I'm hoping that I'm confirming to the time that these are the measures. But before I conclude, I want to mention specifically the impact of the pandemic in the region on the food sector. Now, I want to refer to a study conducted by the OECD within this period that shows that the impact of food sector, the largest economic sector in the region, representing almost 40% of the regional GDP in 2015, was severely affected. More than 82 million jobs were estimated to be directly affected by the lockdown, according to OECD study. The sector comprised agriculture, food processing, food marketing, restaurants and food vending, MSMEs, small-scale agricultural producers, traders, etc., due to lack of access to workplace, market, land, and financial facilities for them to be able to operate. Now, we are looking forward to, drawing from the experience of the COVID pandemic to see how we can be able to strategize and put in place a recovery plan. And this is what we are also discussing with UNIDO. So we have an ECOWAS plan recovery process for the industrial sector. We are reviewing our industrial strategy to see how we can be able to draw from the experiences we have gathered from addressing the COVID issue to plan an industrial recovery strategy. So which I will be able to present in the next question. Now, so we are working with UNIDO in this direction to develop a ECOWAS regional industry recovery plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ajoko. We were very happy to hear how ECOWAS is using standards in the fight against the COVID-19 and also limiting the negative impacts through the work on the standardization. So thank you so much. And now the next question goes to Dr. Sengimana, and this refers mostly to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which was launched almost 2 years ago at the African Union Summit in Kigali. And it was scheduled to be actually implemented from the 1st of July 2020. But obviously, due to the current situation and the impact of COVID-19, there is a need for leaders to focus on other areas and on saving people's lives. So this was postponed indefinitely. So what will be the implications of the postponement of the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area on trade and standards harmonization efforts from the ARSA perspective? Over to you.
Thank you, Dominica. Thanks first of all to UNIDO for the invitation to this important meeting. The first question on postponement of implementation is the good news, the good history is being postponed. Yeah, I think it was big news for Africa to start a continental free trade area. But nevertheless, I can say the health of people and the well-being is more important. Yeah. When you look at the bigger picture, I will start by the ARSO preparedness towards the FCFTA. One thing we worked on was on policy issues, together with the other Pan-African equality infrastructure, developing the African equality policy. The second was to also look at how ARSO collaborates with the regional economical communities. As you heard from ECOWAS, we have 8 regional economical communities. That's also developed standards with regard to their priorities. And we created the joint advisory group that includes one representative from the REX. We created the standard management committee that also includes one representative from each REX in order to drive the standardization work towards the AFCFTA. Then on technical part, we reviewed the Africa Standard Harmonization model that allows the Joint Advisory Group, the SMC, which is the Standard Management Committee, to be part of the whole process and report to the Council for the standard progress. We also conducted a study for the priority for development and harmonization of standards, looking at the well-traded products, looking at the industrial policy within the regional economical communities, and the existing priority for value chain in Africa. That study is concluded, actually will be published in June, July. We also reviewed the Africa Trade Web Portal, which is a portal where each country, the member state of African Union, can feed into information on requirements when you want to trade with another country on product X. What does that country require? What do you require for that country to import or export with you? When you look at now on that preparedness, I can tell that this COVID-19 actually underpinned the need of the implementation of the AFCFTA. Because when you look at the whole Africa trade, especially on imports, the import from outside was very excessive, and it has been interrupted by this pandemic. Our manufacturers, our industry should now look for the other inputs that were imported from outside. That's where I see even a positive way that in the few months of experience during this pandemic, the requests from different countries were looking at where can we get this mask? Where can we get the raw materials for the personal protective equipment? And the solution came from the SMEs. Yeah, you can see SMEs as the one producing the mask. You can see the small industry as the one producing the PPE. But all this requires a standard to protect our population. Because you cannot just accept a mask, you cannot just accept a hand sanitizer. It requires those standards. And that's where I see more our impact as also as African Organization for Standards when I look at the AFCFTA. A bigger impact negatively will be really on the part of participation of the countries. We have now 30 ratification from countries. When I look at the 30 countries that are state parties, as we call in the AFCFTA, I can see 8 of those countries are not members of ARZO. That's our projection and our strategy was to mobilize all those countries. We stand at 39 members, and as we implement the AFCFTA, we need all the countries, member states of African Union, to be part of this journey. We need harmonized standards. Those 8 countries were the first target that we should mobilize to become members and participate in technical work and the other policy organ of ARZO. This probably will slow down because the countries have other priorities. The countries have other finance constraints. That's a big issue. The next issue will be negative impact on capacity building of quality infrastructure. Because even before talking to policymakers, the benefit of standardization was very difficult. Imagine when now the countries are constrained with the COVID-19 issues, meaning the capacity building will not be conducted as we wish. We concluded together with other Pan-African equality infrastructure, 2 stock taking, 1 on TBT stock taking. We know the levels by 2020, how countries stand on the issue of standard, issues of metrology, issue of accreditation. We also know on the SPS issues. we see more that this capacity building will slow down. Probably we need to think more on how to deal with this. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for that intervention and a very good explanations. So now I go to the next panelist, to Mr. Derek Omar, and the cross-Q perspective. So Americas is another region that is heavily hit by the COVID pandemic, and how the Caribbean communities, tourism, travel, economic and social sectors are affected by the pandemic, and what measures are taken by the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality to mitigate its effects. Over to you, Derek.
Thanks, Dominica. Thanks, UNIDO, for this opportunity to share what we are doing in the region. The Caribbean community comprises 15 small island developing states, and 3 of which are really continental countries, so to speak, but they have an economy similar to island states. Everything that you guys have heard already from Africa and the Pacific applies to us in terms of tourism, travel, the economy, the social systems. There's no difference. I think that's what makes the ACP so good and valuable, because we have those shared commonalities. Tourism and travel have been 100% hit. General unemployment in the region could be 10%, and this COVID effect probably increased unemployment by a close to about 7% more, just because a lot of the islands are very tourist dependent. So tourism contributes as the main economic driver, along with remittances, to maybe 75% of our member states. So it is a big impact indeed. But there is a positive side to everything else. So right now, a lot of hotels are repurposing, a lot of them are renovating because they didn't get time before, and the governments are helping them out with tax breaks and things like that. On the economic side, there has been a huge hit, as you would well imagine, over the last 4 months, but member states have begun to emerge back out to work as of this month. And in our region, agriculture, agro-processing, tourism, light manufacturing, mining and the extractive industries, services are the major 6 industries. All of them really got hit, but on the positive side, it looks like agriculture and agro-processing is finally going to get the attention it needs, because riding out the next 2-3 years, if you could feed yourself and you could feed your population, you're 75% of the survival curve. So on the positive side of things, we think that agriculture, agro-processing going to get a lot more attention. Light manufacturing will also start to get a lot more attention now, because that's where a huge amount of the entrepreneurial class is. So those are a couple of the positive things that are coming out from this impact. We've heard all the negative ones, but there are also some more positives in that member states now understand where they're very much more vulnerable, where they're much more resilient. And even though there has been low growth and high debt, at least this will give us a better focus to where to channel energies going forward. It's going to force a lot of diversification of the economies, and quality infrastructure is an absolute foundation for any economy seeking to diversify or to go into new markets and new businesses. So we've been encouraging a lot of member states officials, do not disinvest in your quality infrastructure at this time. It is not the right time at all. We believe that some of the other proactive things, positive things is coming out of this situation, is there's going to be a huge focus on entrepreneurship, e-commerce, e-business systems, buy local campaigns, and microfinance packages for the SME sectors. The social sector has had its impact, but I think of all the sectors, that might be the best winner, because it really showed the value of the healthcare systems, and in all the regions, they really came first and foremost to everybody's survival and benefits. And like the Pacific, whilst COVID did invade a number of the member states, we were thankful for actually being islands this time around. So within about 45 days, everybody were able to contain their health effects. But the health sector was a clear winner. Civil society and education has been exercising a lot of innovative activities. So that's another clear winner. So we see the impacts as both positive and negative. Obviously, probably the negative impacts have outweighed things, but there's a lot of positive elements in it. And we're looking to see how quality infrastructure can rebound. Now, some of the measures that we have been applying, specifically as a group of 15 bureaus of standards in the region, is that we have really been preaching that in economic downturns, it's not the time to disinvest in your quality infrastructure. So you have to resist that temptation. And the more you can build a robust and evolving quality infrastructure in this time, it is more important, because then you could avoid costly private sector mistakes in quality when the private sector could least afford it. You could protect consumers' health and safety when individually these consumers are less able to protect themselves now. You could protect consumers from substandard products and services. And you can also protect the environment with your quality infrastructure, because when times are difficult, people often forget that the resources around them are not free, and therefore you need to use it in a constructive manner. And finally, you know, in a general way, there's another reason you need to keep investing in quality infrastructure, and that's because you can't transform your economy without it. You need standards, you need measurement infrastructure, you need laboratories. So now is the time to ramp up your investment in quality infrastructure, not go back on it. More specifically, the 15 bureaus have come up with a list of common areas of push, so that way you can build a critical mass. So some of these areas as examples quickly are like in the area of quality promotions. You know, a big campaign is now being launched to educate people about what is quality, how to buy better with quality, the role and value of standards in selecting your food, reading your labels. Businesses have to reinvent themselves. They have to come up with new business models, and quality management system standards are very important, like ISO 22001, 9001, HACCP. So we've been encouraging companies to start investing more in quality management systems in your new business models. In the areas of standards, we have a regional project afoot to adopt PPE and other such protective standards from ASTM, ISO, and we have CARICOM regional standards in those areas are ready to push. And also we have begun to accelerate the development of standards in tourism and health, and hotel accommodations, and beauty and the wellness sector. And most importantly, if we're going to see a rebound in agriculture and agro-processing as two primary opportunities, we put in a renewed focus on good agricultural practices, GAP, good manufacturing practices, GMP, and HACCP. In the areas of metrology infrastructure, the bureaus are going around and encouraging the ministries of health to put more attention on the metrology and the calibration of the medical devices and measurements. And obviously, accreditation of labs is taking a foremost perspective, especially in trade and in health. We have the Trinidad and Tobago Laboratory Accreditation Service, and we have the ILAC recognized Jamaica National Accreditation Service, who have been really pushing more with us in that regard to get our labs accredited, or at least with good quality management systems. And finally, we're pushing certification of food safety systems and standards in the main, along with product certification now, but it's quite a task trying to get more and more people to buy into the certification of products, but it comes naturally with food safety and food security now. So those are some of the more granular initiatives we're doing as a collective 15 bureaus of standards in the region to try to work together to create a better regional quality infrastructure, to build on the gains of the pandemic, as well as to help mitigate some of the adverse effects.
Thank you, Derek, so much for that very explanatory answer. So that is greatly appreciated, and we are more than happy to hear about all the initiatives and activities undertaken within the quality infrastructure sphere. Thank you so much. And now the last question of the first round goes to Mr. Bernardo Calzadilla Sarmiento. So Bernardo, if you could tell us in short some concrete actions taken by UNIDO in combating the COVID-19 pandemic in their member states, and what would be, or what would you see as the role of UNIDO in the post-COVID-19 era to assist the countries in rebalancing their economies? Thank you, over to you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, can you hear me? Yes. Good afternoon to those who are in this time zone. Good morning to you in the Caribbean. So happy to have so much diversity in this panel, and I would like to thank especially all the panelists. I have heard so much. I'm not sure if I can add too much to this discussion, but maybe take from the discussion and mention that, yeah, we have heard the first moment we got is certainly disruption. We started with the disruption of the value chain. The disruption started in a province in China and has affected all over the supply of products in many goods, and we started to see a shrinking of the economy and the production in general. And this also happened at the same time that many countries started to go into a lockdown. The lockdown led to a reduction of the global demand. So the economy has been shrinking. And obviously, when there is a shrinking economy, investment gets stalled. We have not been seeing investment. I have seen the figures, I think, from ACTA, over 40% of decrease in investment. I will not quote the figures, but rather say, well, from the point of view of UNIDO and then a bit the UN, we have our SDG framework, the Sustainable Development Goals, and what we have been seeing is that this crisis will lead to a difficulty to achieve the goals. We started with a lot of problems basically on people, SDG 3, but it started basically also with the trade of the value chains decreasing. And what we also have seen, and it was mentioned by my colleagues, the panelists already, the relevance of standards, food safety standards, testing standards, laboratories came into place, testing comes into place, medicine, vaccines, all related to a system that is required to precisely give the proper response in many sectors, not only in the health sector, which is at the core, and we saw in your poll, thank you, that this is the most affected, but the very affected is the economy. We saw some positive aspects certainly in the planet, because we have been seeing cities that were closed down, and we started to see the sun coming up in many cities. And in the case of waste management, we have seen again testing laboratories and standards play an important role. But yes, what is really affecting us all is the decrease of trade, SDG 8, and also, as well, quality infrastructure in SDG 9. But I agree with Derek when he says there are some positives. And I think that in SDG 9, we have a lot of positives. This, and maybe I know that there will be a second round and the next discussion on the future, but I think this crisis has shown us that innovation and digitalization is being precipitated and is helping us to really look into the future. So I see that there is also some positive hope. Certainly, we need to recover. We need to help SMEs, entrepreneurs, industries to recover, because business are struggling. But again, standards, and A lot has been said which standards can help to respond. And UNIDO has been responding to the crisis with three basic concepts. Contain was the first phase, adapt and recover. In Contain, we have been doing a lot of activities related to contain the impacts of disruption and protect supply chain, business sector and workers, and advocating to maintain the flow of goods. As you know, immediately we saw a wave of protectionism, and we were shocked to see that some countries are stopping exports of medical, of PPE products, etc. And then we realized, yes, this is allowed within the international multilateral trading framework. This is allowed to protect safety of humans, of the environment. It's possible to put restrictive measures, but we have seen also underlying a subliminal protectionism that was there. And this is very, very worrying. But again, we have to deal with it, and we have to make sure that in this case, where tariffs are not playing the central role in, and I think we have heard how trade borders have been closing. So tariffs are not having the main role, but TBTs have started to play an important role, SPS measures as well. But we have seen that this is being utilized as a way to disseminate a protectionism. In terms of adapting, what we have been doing is to promote digitalization, innovative solutions. We migrated to digital space together. We are in the digital space now. And we are working in solutions to recover. But when I talk about digital space also, I must say that the crisis has shown us that there is a digital divide, that many people have the risk to stay out of the integration into this new digital age, because precisely those who are already integrated in the digitalization process in the internet have access. We can survive, and we did not suffer so much in these 2 months, but we heard in ECOWAS how tough it is, how people are suffering when they are in lockdown. And this also summarizes a situation that we saw of lack of trust. We have lost confidence, and these are the things we have to do. So while we move into recovery phase, we really need to make sure that we have a rebuild of the trust we need among countries and the regions. I strongly believe, because they are already in the process of integrating, can play a fundamental role in helping for that. Just a couple of examples on contain and mitigate. UNIDO started very successfully to launch a series of webinars. We had a wonderful discussion at the beginning with our partners from INET-QI. And I mentioned partners of INET-QI, I will not mention the agencies, but partnership is one way of the solution, because we need collective decisions. We need networking, not only at the level of the regions with partners and with the private sector. We have been seeing what has been going on in the PPE section, and standards are fundamental for that. UNIDO is not a standards organization, and we have received the question, what can UNIDO do in this challenge of substandards? Yes, we can advocate to address the problem. In adapting, we have been working through our projects, technical cooperation, supporting SMEs in Tajikistan, in Armenia, to diversify into PPE production. But we have also advising larger companies that have been reshifting and restructuring how to manage to integrate into the large economy through certification, through their accreditation. We have companies that started to produce N95 masks, that started to produce respirators, but they want to access the global markets. So we have not been helping the technicalities of the reshifting of the production, but how they can be recognized. We have been also working with some countries and resilience roadmaps for value chains. We have revitalized our knowledge hub. And in terms of recovery, we have just launched a program called COVID-19 Industrial Recovery Program that will help companies after an assessment to really enter a process of recovery, which I understand from my colleagues will be able also to be provided remote. This means we do not need to deploy large technical cooperation in the field, but we will be able to provide coaching and supporting to the companies through the remote. So we are also thinking how to change the way we do things. And finally, also we set up a program. We have an ITPO network, Investment and Technology Promotion Offices network, that is located in Rome, in Bonn, in Moscow, in Tokyo, in Shanghai, in Bahrain, and Seoul. And the program in Tokyo set up a program to help technologies developed in Japan to be transferred. And this is very interesting for all the regions, for Africa, but also for the Pacific Island, because we can really make sure that these technologies will be able to reach the countries. This is a very important operation that we have launched, and this is amazing that we could launch within the lockdown. We could even launch, this is a $4 million project that we launched within this process. And again, to say, we need to take more advantage of the partnerships. We have the Global Manufacturing Industrialization Summit that migrated also to work digital, and is going to have in September now the virtual gathering that was supposed to be in Hanover. We have been working with the Global Quality and Standards Program supported by SECO to really make sure that we integrate different countries. And again, the idea that it is easier when you work with a group of countries in a country by country. And finally, and I don't need to mention too much, the West Africa Competitiveness Program that is in the ECOWAS region, that has been doing tremendous work, amazing work in terms of standardization. Who would have believed that they are able in 2 months without physical presence to come up with standards related to PPE. So this is basically what we have been working on. We have been also teaming up with the WHO, and certainly great thanks to our donors, the EU, Japan, NORAD, SECO. I could not continue, and I don't want to miss any of the donors that are supporting us. So I will leave it at that. Thank you, Dominika.
Thank you, Bernardo. So we go to the round 2 of the questions. And let me just make a small note, because we need to make sure that we leave appropriate amount of time for the questions and answer at the end of the webinar. And I can see that the questions are already coming. So if we could stick to the intervention time of 5 minutes per panelist, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay, so now the second round, we start again with Ambassador Falemaka. So Ambassador, as you have mentioned in the answer to your first question, in this new reality of hardship encountered by the Forum Island countries, the Pacific Quality Infrastructure Initiative takes on a new meaning and urgency. And how do you see the importance of such technical assistance cooperation programs from the Pacific Islands region perspective? Over to you.
Thank you, Dominika. You are absolutely right. The Pacific Quality Infrastructure Initiative, which started in 2017, was mainly to address the barriers undermining the ability of Pacific businesses to trade successfully, and also to take advantage of market access that we enjoy under the regional free trade agreements such as PESA Plus, the Economic Partnership Agreement with the EU, and also under the Pacific Island countries trade agreement. It was also in recognition of the need to accommodate the transition of our members in moving from export of raw materials to value-added products that would face standards and quality requirements in our export market, and as well as to protect Pacific people, to ensure that they live healthy lives and protect the pristine environment of the Pacific. But regional cooperation on quality infrastructure is fundamental to overcome the limitations of small domestic markets, which make it uneconomical to establish complex national infrastructure systems. Regionalism is also fundamental to stimulate trade within regional blocs through harmonization of standards, technical regulations, and mutual recognition on conformity assessment procedures. The Pacific is fortunate because it is a newcomer in this area of quality infrastructure systems, but we appreciate the support that we have from a broad network of partners, including those that are on the panel today, from our colleague ACP regions, the ASO, CrossQ, and also UNIDO. These organizations, with the help of the European Union funds and also the EIF funds, have helped the Pacific Island Forum raise awareness about the importance of quality infrastructure in the region, build local capacity, and generated consensus for a medium-term regional program that was endorsed by the Pacific Islands Forum Trade Ministers in February this year. So the regional program envisages activities under all the pillars of the quality infrastructure systems, for example, the development of national quality policies, update of legislation, harmonization of regional standards, establishment of regional schemes to reduce costs of accreditation, certification, strengthening of testing and verification capacities, and qualitative upgrade of selected value chains. COVID-19 adds new significance to the Pacific Quality Infrastructure Initiative. For example, in our region, our region had, as a result of COVID-19, has exposed the region's reliance on our partners, in particular with our reliance on Australia and New Zealand for COVID-19 testing. Samples were taken to Australia and New Zealand while our member countries wait a few days and weeks for results to be known. And a few members have since developed their domestic testing facilities as a result. At the global level, and here in Geneva, we are monitoring the trade measures that have been imposed. I think Dr. Bernardo spoke on that. And as a result of concerns by a lot of the WTO members on the potential to move towards protectionist and a protectionist trade environment. So the message of trying to keep markets open was clearly one of the key messages that we hear here in Geneva. But nevertheless, the monitoring of trade measures imposed by members continue in the WTO. As of the 29th of May last week, a total of 228 trade measures were reported in the WTO database. A preliminary analysis of these measures undertaken for the ACP member states in Geneva by the ACP consultants indicate that of these 228, the biggest category notified to the WTO, or 40% of those measures notified, were TBT measures. And of the total TBT measures notified, 38% imposed new restrictions or imposed new requirements, 18% involved relaxation, and 8% were trade facilitative. So COVID has brought about added requirements for compliance, while relaxation measures is serving the fight against COVID to stimulate domestic production. Accelerated process to certify standards of medical equipment and supplies can result in the sale of faulty equipment, which, if undetected, can have the potential to create devastating health consequences. Whereas countries with robust QI systems are able to detect this and recall these faulty supplies, the chances of detecting this is limited for the Pacific Island countries because we have weak quality infrastructure systems. So these are serious lessons learned. So COVID has indeed brought about new significance for our region and renewed urgency to strengthen our quality infrastructure systems for to prevent future occurrence in future crises. The Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat will, whenever possible, leverage the initiative to COVID-proof economic development, including QI systems in the region and the lessons learned from COVID. The Pacific Quality Infrastructure Initiative can help in addressing this issue by supporting development of regional standards for inspection, building selected testing capacity, and improving exchange of information on COVID-related equipment and supplies. Looking ahead, quality infrastructure will be crucial to reassure our partners about our export readiness in a COVID environment or post-COVID environment, post-COVID environment. Tourism is a case in point. You will recall in my previous intervention, I referred to a Pacific travel bubble planned by Australia and New Zealand. It is likely that some Pacific countries will be included in that bubble. So increasing the strength of our country's quality infrastructure is important, as this would need to assess matters of compliance that are relevant, such as relevant standards for air transport, adoption of agreed procedures for screening, incoming and outgoing passengers, safety and hygiene, and so forth. So the important role by adding COVID-19 dimension to the planned activities in improving quality infrastructure in selected value chains is really at the forefront of our minds. While COVID-19 represents enormous challenges in our region, particularly for quality infrastructure, it has also provided some opportunities, which we should not lose sight of. I think Dr. Bernardo also mentioned opportunities, and the deployment of ICT solutions, including online meetings, bodes well for initiatives such as ours, which envisage the establishment of regional committees on key aspects of quality infrastructure. COVID has clearly demonstrated that cyberspace is feasible and it allows for significant savings without compromising productivity. The Pacific Quality Infrastructure Initiative will make good use of these lessons by promoting virtual meetings as the new normal, so as to save resources and improving services to members. The Pacific Island Forum Secretariat is establishing a new quality infrastructure unit at its headquarters in Suva to strengthen the coordination of the Pacific Quality Infrastructure Initiative. Some resources have already been mobilized to support the initiative's implementation. However, significant gaps still remain, and we are looking forward to UNIDO's support to fill some of these gaps, including through the EU intra-ACP resources, which may be available for quality infrastructure. Thank you.
Ambassador, thank you so much for your intervention and explanations. Again, we are very happy. We are very happy to note that the Pacific Island Forum countries are already engaging very strongly in the partnership for strengthening quality infrastructure and how to build and strengthen quality infrastructure to respond to the COVID emergency. Thank you so much for that. Let me move to the next question. So the next question is for Dr. Ajoku. And Dr. Ajoku, we would like to know why the regional responses and regional cooperation with regard to the quality infrastructure are critical in the extraordinary times like those of the COVID-19 pandemic to minimize the negative social, economic, and industrial impacts of the pandemic and stimulate growth. Over to you.
Thank you, Daphne. I think I will approach that question from, looking at the experiences, we have had within this period of COVID. I will also align it or linking it to what happened when we had Ebola. A lot of local initiatives came up, and then unfortunately, after the Ebola experience, we couldn't build on that experience. But then, luckily, with the COVID pandemic, some of our countries, for instance, Senegal, was able to leverage on the experience of Ebola and developed testing kits that cost, less than what we were spending or expected to spend to import testing kits. And Ghana followed. A lot of local initiative emanated from this. And, looking at what Dr. Bernardo said about the containment, adaptation, and recovery. Now, that is our approach, because already we are trying to draw experience from the containment measures we have taken, because a lot of innovative indigenous ideas emanated. Even some universities, some local researchers were able to develop ventilators, which are ideal to our environment. And now we need to harness these potentials, and see how we can now be able to deploy quality and standardization in ensuring that we can be able to produce products that are acceptable to our community and help us, in future to be able to respond, at least to issues like this without, waiting for external support. And so we are convinced that as much as the COVID created problem for us, we also have some experience to draw from there for us to be able to build our process. And again, I want to also let our viewers, also the listeners, to note that in addressing the COVID pandemic, also initiatives like leveraging on local hubs, a lot of efforts were made to be able to produce, herbal treatment for, and preventive measures for the COVID. And these are areas that we need to see how we can integrate this into our healthcare development delivery system. And then also all this requires, conformity to quality issues and standardization. And so these are areas that we are going to. So that will lead us to the adaptation process as well as the recovery. Now, I will also want to explain that, developing that part of our recovery phase strategy for COVID-19 is to develop a regional program to integrate our member states into the regional value chains and that serve the needs of ECOWAS in the recovery stage. And we are looking at the possibility of also aligning this to our existing institutional framework, because maybe you are aware, but I would like to also state it here, that prior to now, in ECOWAS, we have the ECOWAS quality infrastructure, we have the ECOWAS quality policy, we have the harmonization scheme, what we call the ECOSHAM. These are veritable instruments we have been using to promote quality infrastructure development and enhance competitiveness of our economies as well as our industries, and we think that, with this, again, that with this development is going to help us to reinforce our commitment towards the sustenance of the implementation of the quality infrastructure system programs in the region, and then as well as, promoting quality awards and advocacy, creating that consciousness of the need for quality in the region. So we are committed, and then with the support of institutions like UNIDO, as well as the financial support from European Union and other development partners like African Development Bank and other partners, we are convinced that we'll be able to leverage on the experience gathered from trying to address the issue of COVID-19 pandemic in harnessing these indigenous experiences and innovations that we have been able to produce during this period of the crisis, to see how we can now be able to build a very robust and strong healthcare system, as well as industrial sector that can also respond at a very short time for any emergency that might arise in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that intervention. And then the next question goes to Dr. Hermogene Sengimana. So how does African Organization for Standardization support the national standardization body's efforts in dealing with the pandemics now and also in the future? And will the development of the African quality policy be a fundamental contribution to that effort? Over to you, Hermogene.
Yeah. Thank you, Dominica. Maybe I start with the quote that a good friend in need is a good friend indeed. What we have learned, we can have solution locally. We can have solution on our continent, in Africa, in the Caribbean, in the Pacific. It's just to trust ourselves. The first thing we did, we shared the African regional standards that were available, mainly on hand sanitizer. Actually, we had even requests from our friend from the Caribbean, from the Pacific, and from Asia who wanted those standards. And we gave those standards for free, not read only, to use them for the development of hand sanitizers. Then we requested our members from African continent to avail the standards to their stakeholders for free. Actually, on our website, you can find 14 countries, African countries that have availed their standards. You can go on their link, you download those standards, you use them during this period. That was very, very important to show that it's not really a big thing to do. The second part is it's what we have been trying to convince different stakeholders that sometimes we don't look at what our industry needs. We request our industry to produce at platinum level, high level, rather than grow with the industry from different steps, what we call maturity model. And this was a period where the countries actually have built confidence and now allowing their SMEs to produce according to the local standard. Then other industries that have a different level of production of changing their system can also produce, if they are masks, maybe medical masks, but if they are just face masks in the public, allow your industry to grow. Actually, people are making business using the standard. It's a good thing for us because now it's publicity for standards in a good way. That was the second part, to overcome this issue that standards are just a myth for bigger industry. Maturity model is very, very important. And we should not go back, as what my brother Kemji, Dr. Kemji was saying, Ajoko, that the experience we had from Ebola, we should have learned from that experience. And we didn't learn from that experience. Let's this time, with this COVID-19, learn experience that we can do it. We can do something about what we have, about our local material, about our industry. We can really grow together using the standard. The third part, we secured now a project for 3 years to develop standards with regard to pharmaceutical, medical devices, and more importantly, the Africa traditional medicine. As you heard all over the news, we have many countries that are producing supplements, food supplements, to overcome the COVID. We are availing the standard that we have actually developed already on good manufacturing practice for this traditional medicine, good collection practice, and the other standards that are available. Because at least people should follow the good manufacturing practice before they give this medicine to their population. Then the other issues of testing, that is the regulators that will go about it. But in crisis, we all know anything you will see on the market, you will take it because it's saving your life. That's why we don't have something that we can tell, get this, you will be out of the hospital the next morning. We should do something that we have a project which will be short-term, medium-term, long-term, but short-term is focusing mainly on the COVID issue. The other point is utilization of online tools. Actually, tomorrow we are having a webinar that I can see almost 400 people have registered on a guideline. We have a guideline to how we can hold the technical committee meetings online, because we shouldn't stop the meetings because there are no physical meetings. Let's work online, see what we can do for our people, for our population. And on the question of the AQP, I think the African equality policy will be very crucial. Will be very crucial because it gives us guidelines to see how different organizations on quality infrastructure can work together, meaning standardization, metrology, accreditation, organization in conformity assessment, a way of having an institutional arrangement. If you look at, you analyze it very well, in different countries, they not even just countries, you can even look at the world stage. There are conflicting ideas. If I am a regulator, I want to say I am the one who should deal with this. If I am another kind of organization, I am the one who should have said this on TV or in media. This conflict, when we are dealing with issues like health issues, I think it's very important to know that we should come together and work together. And I hope that it will not be during this COVID-19. It should continue, and we continue working together for our different stakeholders. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I especially liked your comment when you said that actually the current situation is a kind of promotion of standards, and actually a marketing for standards, which is very true, because now increasing number of people who are not even related in any way to quality infrastructure issues are interested in the issue of standardization and standards. So thank you for that. And the next question goes to Mr. Derek Omar. How important from the CrossQ perspective is the regional level of cooperation in the quality infrastructure and quality promotion spheres to address such, for example, global challenges as the current one? Thank you. Over to you.
Thanks, Dominica. We think regional cooperation in quality infrastructure is really critical. It actually started long before the COVID. The COVID just makes it even more important now. Now, in terms of the global challenges of the future, some of the things that we foresight in is more trade protectionism. That's going to lead to more disruptions in supply chains, more new market requirements to enter into markets, probably a decline in foreign direct investment, probably some rolling back of globalization, and that will cause a disruption in the value chains. Then we see a shift of global leadership from the West to the East. So that's a new dynamic to try to manage, and new people to get to know. Probably there'll be more social welfare systems, and there'll obviously be more health challenges. So when you look at those global challenges in the future, which may not come to pass, we do see increasing global marginalization for a lot of the small island developing states like us in the Caribbean. So in such circumstances, regional cooperation is even more paramount than it was previously, because no small island developing state has the capacity or resources to do it themselves. And in the area of quality infrastructure, this process of regional cooperation has long started since with the advent of the Caribbean Community Revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, which is our intra-regional trade and economic cooperation agreement. And coming out of that revised treaty, CrossQ was born in 2001, and then the whole concept of the regional quality infrastructure started to gain momentum since then, and especially in more recent times, with the regional quality policy that we developed and implemented, and with some assistance from PTB, the German Metrology Institute in the main, and some new information and ideas coming out of UNIDO, which is very timely. And, you know, with this advent of CrossQ since 2001, with the regional quality policy, it is helping us in the region to more learn how to cooperate, especially when we realize that it's only together we're going to be able to survive these economic challenges in the future. And we have some great partners who have been helping us, like GIZ, PTB, the EU, ACP, British Standards Institute, ASTM, World Bank, CEN, And we're really grateful for those assistance. And in the future, it will become probably more important to get help from those partners. Now, in a nutshell, we see that responding to these international challenges of more maybe global contraction and more marginalization, regional cooperation is important. And what will underlie regional cooperation is trust. And how do you demonstrate trust? Through quality infrastructure. You can't bluff with quality infrastructure because it's all science. So we see demonstration of the use and harmonization of quality infrastructure between our islands as building trust. This trust is going to bring more regional cooperation, and with more regional cooperation, we should be able to survive probably the tough times of the next 5 years while a new world order is reestablished. Now, finally, another big area in our region is the whole issue of quality promotions and adding that as a dimension to regional quality infrastructure. This social science is really more important to us now because this is where you teach the individual citizen how to develop a quality consciousness so they can do regional quality infrastructure and national quality infrastructure themselves, which is sustainable quality infrastructure. So quality promotions is a big new science, a social science, a management science. We promote it in the region, and we're using again some of the UNIDO principles of inclusiveness and ownership and coherence and optimization to promote that, because we feel with a better quality culture, there's going to be a stronger demand at the individual level for increasing quality platforms, which will give us better resilience against vulnerabilities in the future and build the economy from a groundswell of the people too. So we want to show the people that quality is a right, quality is accessible, and it is affordable now in this day and age. So quality promotions is another big thing for us, apart from all the other physical sciences of QI to really help build the trust and the cooperative agenda of our region. Thanks.
So thank you, Derek, so much. And then thank you, Derek. And I especially appreciate this emphasis on the promotion of the quality promotion and the promotion of the quality culture, because that's very often very difficult to develop. And that's what's very often the understanding of the importance of that aspect sometimes is missing. So thank you so much for highlighting that. And the last question for today goes to Dr. Bernardo Calzadilla Sarmiento. So Bernardo, what kind of overreaching advice can you give to the webinar audience to come out safe from the current lockdown and pandemics, and what role they can play in building a robust quality infrastructure in African, Caribbean, and Pacific regions, and other regions as well? Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dominika. Yes, let me look at a bigger picture. I mean, we have been facing a crisis that was coming about within a process which was paradigmatic. We were in the middle of a technological accelerated transformation that we have been calling the fourth industrial revolution. But with this COVID-19, the COVID has become a catalytic factor for this digital transformation, and the digital transformation will lead us to change education. We have heard how much education will change, but it will change the way we work. And you have heard many of us are asking, can we not have this partial remote work? Are we not productive doing these things? So we need to be open, we need to be flexible, we need to see this as an opportunity. And when we see this as an opportunity, that we had already the changing pressure, we had disruption, and now we have to embrace in a more decisive manner digital transformation. But when we talk about digital transformation, we need to remind that nobody should be left behind. I have said it already, but digital life has shown us that is only at the moment for the smaller part of the population. We need to work all together to make sure that everybody has access and be part of this. In terms of management, I think this is clear. We will migrate to a situation where information, big data, cloud computing, you name it, real data, will help us to take decisions, and we will have faster and faster response tools, and UNIDO can help there. UNIDO is working on developing the tools for the businesses, for the companies, for industries to recover and have this new business model to really migrate into the digital economy and shift for e-commerce, for example, through blockchain, for all these new technologies that will lead us to the new normal, and the new normal will be intrinsically related to the fourth industrial revolution. It will help us to restore our lives. We need to embrace technology with a more constructive and positive way. Sure, I have seen already in the questions, I was going through some of the questions, energy is very important to make this happen, but we need to make everything happen that will allow us to move this digitalization process, because the future will be there. There is a lot of changes in the value chains. The value chains become local, shorter. We need to make sure that we can integrate the country still in a global globalization and global market process, because otherwise we will face more marginalization of the countries. I think that to work for all, we need to embrace innovation and digitalization in a very sustained and continuous manner. We need to promote investment and technology and investment will change. It will come with a lot of digitalization process, the way we do the investment promotion activity, but also there is a need of large investment into this digital activity. And finally, in the area where we are looking, and we had already started in the last 2 years to work on how can quality infrastructure be reinvented. We called it how to reboot quality infrastructure, but our aim was to look reinvention towards the sustainable development goals. But now we have seen, while we were developing this in a paradigm, that it has to relate explicitly to the digitalization, and it is happening. Metrology 4.0 is nothing new. It is in all the reports of many companies, of many institutions, with smart measuring sensors, 3D scanning, mobile tools, the smart lab, smart laboratories that are, let's say, theoretically fully automated. So we have the 4.0, Industry 4.0, the factory that is fully automated. Well, we have this vision of this smart laboratory, which is also sometimes scaring. But well, what we will see is more artificial intelligence in machine learning, big data and cloud computing in these areas, such as conformity assessment, in the areas of management, certainly, but also in testing. There will be a lot that will help us on the testing. On the value chain, blockchain will be the dominant technology. There is no doubt that the main technology for traceability and for verification will be blockchain, but also other technologies, sensors, drones, real-time information, how we verify certification, audits, etc. I think that we can have another discussion on this. I just wanted to give a flavor that with this crisis, we can embrace it by accepting and taking the advantage that we need to move stronger on technological acceleration. We need to prepare better for the fourth industrial revolution. There is no way back. There is no pre-COVID and after COVID. COVID will stay with us. Maybe another pandemic will come. We need to learn to do things differently and take the advantage in this regard to the future. Thank you so much, Dominika.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. So that would be the last question from our formal discussion, and now we have around 15 minutes for questions and answers. So let me look at some of the questions that we have received from the audience. Right. So one of the questions being, so from the discussions, ACP countries have a lot of commonalities. Is there an overreaching cooperation mechanism between the organizations in such areas as quality infrastructure capacity building and information sharing? I don't know if anyone from the panelists wants to take that question. Okay, please, Harmonize.
One issue that comes to mind is our MOU with CrossQ, with Derek Omar. Actually, it's an MOU that we signed as a partnership for ACP countries, how the quality infrastructure can work together and learn from each other. And we have actually a project going on sustainability, certification sustainability, what we call EcoMark Africa, and maybe there will be EcoMark Caribbean or CARICOM, but we trained some experts from the CrossQ family, and we are really working together to support each other. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that answer. The next question is understanding the issue raised on the capacity building by Harmonize. UNIDO is doing very well in using technology for this purpose. To what extent can we extend this to the rest of the ACP countries? For example, organization of webinars and workshops such as this one to address certain specific capacity gaps. I don't know, Harmonize, if you want to take it, or maybe Derek, if you have anything to add, or Ambassador.
Yes, if I may respond, Dominic.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador.
Yes, thank you. I did make the statement towards the end of the my second intervention that the impetus provided by COVID to improve the deployment of ICT solutions, including online meetings, is really one area that presents itself as an opportunity. And I think this is where UNIDO's expertise on quality infrastructure can be made more accessible to regions like us in the ACP that are trying to strengthen our systems, and particularly more so for the Pacific. We are still in this learning curve, and we are fortunate that we are learning from other ACP regions that are more advanced than ourselves, but in particular CrossQ and ASO, and they had been very helpful in sharing their own experiences, particularly CrossQ in holding our hand through the quality infrastructure project that we are developing for the region. Yes, and also in relation to the first question, I think on the regional cooperation, this is really important for us to engage with our ACP regions who are ahead of ourselves. And we have learned a lot in the short time we have been working closely with CrossQ. And also we've learned a lot from ASO in that regard. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
And if you allow to add,
sure,
Dominica,
sure.
Yes, I think that really this discussion, this conversation is wonderful to showcase that through this crisis we are learning so much, and we have such a great opportunity. UNIDO ourselves, we have been partnering with all of you, but the question is how to bring all together. Yeah, and this imagine to travel to the Pacific Island, to travel to Vanuatu, to Fiji, how long it takes. And then we have the colleagues from CrossQ, we have ARSO and ECOWAS, and we have many more partners. As a matter of fact, I wanted to one comment. One challenge when we do these things is again the digital access. Yeah, we had a partner that said, no, you know, I prefer not to join this this event and this type of events because our system is not stable enough. And Mr. Juko already mentioned also there, he has been a lot hesitating because we have this problem. But once we will solve and we will stabilize, it's not on all UNIDO, but UNIDO we can promote. Digital infrastructure is part of the mandate of our partner agencies such as the ITU and others, but we have to promote and make sure that we really can benefit of these new technologies that are allowing us so much. In 1.5 hours, we would have had to travel. As a matter of fact, this discussion was supposed to be a conference in Ghana, yeah, in March, April 2020, and we are so glad that we're having this discussion. Sure, it would have been different. We would have a lot of speakers, a lot of people coming, but still, we can still move forward our agenda together and move on. And we will have, I hope very soon, still the opportunity to meet face to face, to continue doing the work in a different manner, but we have to take advantage of the technology.
Good, Bernardo. So taking this opportunity, I have a very good question for you coming from the floor. And it says, so beyond quality infrastructure, how can the fourth industrial revolution help to cope with the COVID crisis, to revert the negative consequences and try to sustain the positive effects? Bernardo, over to you.
I thought I have mentioned somehow this already. I don't think that we had a very good example from UNIDO in Shanghai, how these automated cars can help in the hospitals in concrete cases. I have seen also in Colombia automated small little cars doing the shopping. So we have a lot of small examples how this can help in the case of the crisis, but artificial intelligence will certainly evolve in this direction in the future. But I see the most important element in our area, because we are an industrial development organization, how these technologies can help business, can help small businesses. And this is why, and it was mentioned before, we have to forge entrepreneurship, digital entrepreneurship, because the potential for job creation is in youth, is in the women, and we need to look more how we can help those. I think that small companies need support, big companies can do the job for themselves, but we need to look at those populations that really can make a difference if we equip them to develop their creative and innovative capabilities.
Okay, thank you, Bernardo. Hermogene, you wanted to add something or no?
Actually, on African continent, we have countries that are using drones for awareness creation, for social distancing on African continent. If you go to digital area, the payment of electricity, the payment of water, imagine if we were having these long lines to go to pay water. Either the government should give water for free or electricity for free, but at least people are using the digital payment, the digital platform. And there are also other several initiatives on the African Organization for Standardization. Together with our partners, we are developing the African Standardization Strategy for the fourth industrial revolution. I think that's also an area of collaborative efforts that we can have between SCP countries and UNIDO and so on. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you so much for all your answers. Thank you so much for all your questions, and thank you so much for the participation. So now, as we have 5 minutes towards the end, let me just in one sentence or in 3 sentences actually summarize very briefly the discussion. And so pretty much in my concluding remarks, what I would like to just briefly touch upon is that I think all the panelists and we all agreed that there is, of course, that there is a disruption to value chains, to the global value chains, disruption to trade, which is being caused by COVID, and that quality infrastructure is an essential element in addressing and in designing a coping strategy with that disruption, but not only the coping strategy, but also how to contain it, how to adapt, and actually how to recover and build the resilient future. So from the quality infrastructure spheres, I think what we heard today is the most about standardization and also about the testing and testing laboratories. And I think the key and the most important and heartwarming message of today is that the cooperation matters, the regional cooperation matters, it is important, And through the partnership, we can share the knowledge and experiences, which allows us to move faster, move forward faster and more efficiently. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for the participation of the distinguished speakers, panelists. Thank you so much for the participation from the audience. I would like to also give a special thanks to the backstage team, which you could not see today. And that would be Josef Padikakuti, Karin Monaco, and Nikki Marters, who made this, also this webinar a success, and also to Dorina Nati, who you could see, at the beginning. And now I will pass the voice back to her again. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you again. Dorina, back to you.
Thank you very much, Dominika. Thank you on behalf of UNIDO. Thank you to all the speakers one more time. Thank you to all the attendees that followed us throughout the session. It was a pleasure to listen to this very fruitful discussion, and it was very interesting to hear the perspective how the regions deal with the current crisis, because we have indeed heard a lot of responses and a lot of activities. So I found it particularly interesting to hear about the regions. With that, I would like to remind the attendees that the session was recorded and that all further information will be made available on the TII Knowledge Hub under tii.unido.org. And I would also like to take this opportunity to remind everybody that next week we are celebrating World Accreditation Day. On that occasion, UNIDO will launch another webinar series together with ISO. So please refer to the TII Knowledge Hub for more information on the upcoming sessions, on the upcoming webinars, and on our publications. I would like to also announce that on the occasion of World Accreditation Day, UNIDO will launch a publication which provides guidance on the implementation of ISO IEC standard 17025 for conformity assessment bodies. And I hope this useful publication and other useful publications will be made available for you on the TII Knowledge Hub. Well, thank you very much again to the panelists, and I would like to close the session with a round of applause, which I think everybody has deserved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you.